do that. All right. We're recording. Great. My name is William Kuskin, and I want to welcome you all to the first ever meeting of Going the Distance, online discussion, a discussion of online and remote innovation. We're still finalizing the Going the Distance schedule, but I hope to have an announcement out later today. The program will feature 3 weekly events. Every week, we will have an instructional seminar led by really one of our wonderful teachers who has done some innovative work with online and remote learning. And my hope is that these instructional seminars will begin with a presentation, but quickly degenerate into really wonderful conversation. So that will be on Mondays at 11:30. We will also have on Wednesdays and Thursdays a tutorial session on technical issues. This will be an open tutorial led by continuing ed instructional designers, and it will be available to everyone in the university, but with a special emphasis for engineering instruction. So those will be open, they'll be drop-in, and really it will be a place where you'll be able to dive in and figure out answers to your own questions. On Fridays, we will end the week with a technical session, and it will feature a topic such as launching a Canvas course, something basic like that, or maybe more in-depth as we move along, in-video quizzing for Canvas. That will happen Fridays at 11:30. So throughout the week, there will be a schedule moving from kind of abstract and exotic intellectual discussion, then down into really the nitty-gritty. And my hope is that as we move across June and July, we can really build up some speed and begin to think creatively, innovatively, but also really empower one another with how to make exciting courses. So that brings me to my goal for this whole seminar, discussion, tutorial series. And my goal here is to recognize that we are at a very unique moment of change. We are at a moment, how can I say this? Online and remote education is well established. Distance education has been around for as long as correspondence courses, since the 19th century. Online teaching has been going full throttle for 25 years. But now we are at a place where we are really forced to integrate digital teaching practices with our residential campus work. And in part, the place we find ourselves is daunting and frustrating and filled with cul-de-sacs. But in part, it is a moment in which we can find ourselves at that moment of being once again junior teachers, being once again challenged with figuring out how to make teaching and learning plug together in an exciting way. I find this moment then, it is a return, and it is a return that is filled with all the fear and frustration and worry of reinvention, but also with all the possibility. So my deep hope for these Monday discussions is that with each week, we open up one possibility and we investigate it and talk about it and realize that this moment is a chance for us to embrace one of the fundamental wonders, teaching, education, learning together. And that though we are mediated by this computer screen, that doesn't shut us down. It is a constraint which can liberate us. So I can't imagine a better person to start this all off than Bob Erickson. Bob Erickson is a leader in the field of power electronics, but he is also a tremendous innovator in digital learning. And I flatter myself to call him my friend. Bob and I have been on a number of adventures together. About 4 years ago, I'm getting so old, I can't remember if it was 4 years, 5 years, a decade, who knows. Bob and I found ourselves in a car, rental Jeep, driving back from Houston. And it's a long drive, 1,000 miles. And together we envisioned the possibility of taking the MOOC Coursera format, taking that format and really riding it into a full Masters of Science. And it took many, many people, long days and nights to make this happen. But in the end, we created what is now known as the MSEE. And the MSEE is a degree on the Coursera platform. It's a University of Colorado Boulder degree on the Coursera platform, which takes the disruptive energy of the 2012 large-scale courses. It takes that energy, that sense of education for all at a low price, professors backing away, learners leaning in, takes that and it runs with it. And so far we've had hundreds of students go through the program. We are inching towards a full degree, but we are offering 4 credits now and we have hundreds of students in it. And Bob is not only one of the founders and visionaries behind the degree, but he teaches a number of courses within the degree. So with no further ado, let me introduce Bob and let me ask him just to tell us about his work in the degree and particularly his way of seeing teaching as modular. So with no further ado, I turn it over to Bob Erickson.
Okay, thank you, William. Yeah, we started this whole MOOC business in 2013, and William actually led a group of us who put up the first 4 campus MOOCs, or free massive open online courses on the Coursera platform, and it was a really exhilarating experience. I mean, at the time they were free. We weren't sure why we were doing them, except it seemed like something worth doing, and it really was. In the power electronics area, it's a pretty specialized graduate area. By the time my 9-week MOOC was done, 40,000 people had signed up. And it was similar. I mean, William's class had a similar number of people. These discussion forums cranked around the clock in all different languages from people around the world. It was not face-to-face. I didn't know those people. They were watching my recorded lectures, but there was a lot going on in this course and a lot of participation and enthusiasm. Since then, it's been a long road, and the drive from Houston was one of those, but to evolve to the point where we are today, I think, we've really learned a lot. And a lot of it is about how to teach distance courses that are asynchronous and at scale and make them interesting to the students. Some of the things that we learned, that were very surprising to me, that you could do machine-graded assignments that were good and were actual good engineering assignments and not stupid multiple choice things. These discussion forums, as long as there's enough people in the class, they would really bring a lot of livelihood and energy to the course. There's a lot to learn about how to improve retention and completion rates, which really come from highly structured modules and from small chunks. The longer the course, the longer anything, the longer the lecture, the more likelihood there is that the person will tune out. And that's just a basic thing to learn. Have short lectures, have short courses, make everything short. Get to the point in this busy world and be done with it. And so I guess what's interesting today, or what I'm thinking about today, is how to adapt all of this for the fall. So my power electronics semester-long dual-listed senior and graduate student course is up for being offered in the fall. Here I've got all this material on Coursera for credit that is teaching the same material, and the question is to think about it and what to do with it. We aren't just giving it the Coursera version on campus. For one thing, the tuition is half as much on Coursera, and it's kind of embarrassing. But second, you know, we have a different audience. It's not the distance audience of working professionals. It's our on-campus students. We have incoming professional master's students who are expecting some kind of personal contact. And we have seniors and just traditional distance students also. So how to adapt that material? So I guess what I want to, a couple of slides here. And I guess the big thing I want to talk about is how to do distance teaching and make it work and engage the students without having the personal contact. And this has been one of the big ongoing, really, battles or bones of contention, even for the Coursera teaching and even with the Coursera management through the years. That their whole platform is geared around distance at scale, asynchronous teaching that is not personal. And I think they really succeeded. And yet the question is, well, is the class valid? Can we give it for credit if you don't have that personal teaching? So William provided this photo this morning, which I'd never seen before, but I guess this is the prison where Socrates was put. Is that right? And so I'm basically saying the Socratic method is the opposite of how to teach at distance, and what is the right way to teach at distance and to replace the Socratic method with something that actually works. Okay, so break out the hemlock here is the subtitle. So we call this teaching in modules and learning from asynchronous distance teaching. And modular teaching, I think, is one of the big things to learn from this Coursera teaching. And you know, what is it about modular teaching that makes it work? Can we distill out why it's a good thing and why it works for distance students? After that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Coursera-based MSEE program and what we are doing there. I'm going to talk, William asked me to talk a little bit about just how I create lectures, and learning to efficiently tape lectures is a learned skill that's important. And then I'll talk about what I'm thinking I'm going to do in my fall course. It's basically a flipped class that is going to learn from all of these things and try to apply them. And we'll see how it goes. So, first thing to learn about mod teaching, I think, is that it's really not about the instructor. In fact, come back to that on the next slide. It's not about the professor, it's not about the lecturer, it's about the student. And a module, here I'm thinking of a module as more or less a week, the way we normally teach a class. It's a content module that has a homework assignment, and then associated with that are lectures and reading and some kind of support things that might include sample problems or solve problems, discussion forums, office hours, and so on. But the key point is the homework assignment. it's not, the key point is not the lecture. The students want to get the points. They're focused on that. This is a 4-credit class with a grade and some certificate or grade or something at the end, transcript and credit. And the student focuses on how to do the homework. Everything else in the module needs to revolve around that and be oriented towards helping the student do the homework. And the students have to understand that that's what the point of the rest of the material in the content or in the module is about. If they don't understand that, they won't even bother to look at the lectures. The course itself then is a series of content modules that build sequentially. And what a key point there is that gluing modules together that don't build really doesn't make sense either. The module number 2 should build on module number 1. And it's not about gluing together enough modules to add up to a semester. It's about putting a sequence of modules together that follow logically. And when you're done with a topic, stop the course. Well, our semester system has all kinds of good reasons why it's the way it is, but it's not very well oriented towards logical flow of content. So a course here should be a series of modules that build sequentially and then stop at some point. And an especially good reason for that is that shorter courses have higher completion rates. Coursera has shown that over and over again. The longer the course, the fewer people complete. In fact, there's just a constant rate of decay of the students in the class. And so if you don't make the class go as long, fewer people get tired or for some reason end up dropping. Certainly for professionals in distance courses, life happens, they get sent on a business trip or something and they drop out. But even for our students on campus, you know, the shorter we make it, the easier they can survive. And when something happens, like they have to quarantine for 2 weeks, is what I'm thinking about now. If you can have them, give them a way to have success without having to stick it out until December, it might be a good thing. I guess the other thing in a course, when it's 4 credit, and this is in the MSEE, is we have some kind of summative assessment. It's basically, we have month-long courses that basically have a proctored midterm exam at the end to give a grade. And then larger constructs are stackable. So they're stackable courses. In the Coursera terminology, we stack several courses together into a specialization that is like a 15-week semester. And we can stack those into graduate certificates and into the degree. So the same total material is there, but it's organized into smaller chunks. And nowadays, people can get through the smaller chunks easier and we have better completion rates. I'd say the early MOOCs had completion rates of maybe 5%, although it was pretty funny to even ask what does that even mean, because they were free and nobody cared if they got the laser printer certificate saying they finished. Today in our early MSEE courses that are 4 credit, we've got something like a 70 or 75% completion rate so far, and that's with performance-based admissions and no credentials to get into the program. Anybody can sign up. All right, it's all about the student and not the professor. So you have to understand, from the student viewpoint, the focus of the module is the homework assignment and not your lectures. And I'll go even further to say that lectures and any other material that does not have a direct bearing on the homework assignment are superfluous and waste everybody's time. And I mean, we have to learn this over and over again, but I have to go back and edit my lectures and cut out all the stories and make them concise and get to the point and be directed. And a lot of students in the online courses go first to the homework assignment without ever looking at anything else. They try it, they can't do it, and then they go back and look at the lectures and all the other material. And if they can see that it's worthwhile to watch the lecture, then they do. They're busy like we are and everybody else. And, you know, I'm not saying they're bad students, just saying that's how it works now. And if you do give lecture material and it's not included in the homework assignments, even if the students watch it, they're going to forget it, of course. So don't bother. So be efficient. We want short lectures. The human attention span is 5 to 10 minutes. And I think it's pretty well understood from teaching research that you need small chunks on the lectures. 5 to 10 minutes is the goal for a taped lecture. I have a hard time getting my lectures down to that. Some of them are that short, but the longest ones are at least no more than 20 minutes and hopefully less. And they need to be concise and directed towards just one thing, like one subsection out of the textbook that is one thing that there's a homework problem about. And then we have to respect the student time and effort. When you hear about our earlier experiments on flipped classes, the students generally hate them, is what I've heard. And the reason for that is that they overwhelm the students. It's so easy to pile all kinds of material. Just keep recording and crank it out. Students get overwhelmed and can't handle it. So it is important to, you know, I'm not saying dumb down the homework or shorten the amount of material, but I am saying that make the material to the point and be as efficient as possible, and make it so that students have a chance to get through it in a week. Okay, a little about the MSEE. So this is the Coursera landing page for our degree. And so this is about half price of our on-campus MSEE or MS degree in electrical engineering. It's about 2/3 of the price of our professional master's program. And students just sign up, pay with their credit card, and take our classes online in the Coursera MOOC format. This is asynchronous, so it's not synchronized to the semester. It does have automated grading of assignments, but the courses do parallel our on-campus semester-long courses and are taught at the same level. But a big difference is we have small chunks. So what's called a course on Coursera might be a month-long course that is like 4 weeks out of the semester with a midterm. We do have some recitation sections run by course facilitators that are like hourly paid TAs, but it's designed for scale. The homework assignments are machine graded, which it's amazing that works, but it does. Coursera can grade homework answers that answers an equation and tell whether the equation is right or wrong. You have to learn how to design these questions to get the equivalent of partial credit. But the good thing about it is you get immediate feedback. Instead of turning in the homework, having it graded and handed back a week later, the students find out right away that their answer was wrong, and then they keep trying, and maybe they go back and watch the lectures some more. Generally, they want the points. And we do have a proctored exam at the end of every course, and we give university transcripted credit. And an odd thing that happened during development of this course was that we had to convinced the university to go along with fractional credit hours. When you divide up a course into small chunks, then you divide the credit hours up into small chunks. And what we ended up with is we have a resolution of 0.2 credit hours allowed, and every 0.2 credit hours is the equivalent of 1 week of an on-campus course. So my semester-long course I'm teaching this fall on Coursera is actually 4 courses on Coursera. Students sign up for the individual fractional credit hour course, and we'll get a grade on the university transcript for each of those courses. So program launched this January, and I think we've got about 350 different students right now taking courses. It's a great start. I hope we get more, over 1,000. But that's where we are. William asked me to talk a little bit about how I create lectures. There's a couple of things to learn about this. The first one is you have to start with an existing lecture that is well organized. You have to have taught this lecture a few times on campus and really have slides before you ever bother doing this. It's another logical leap and fair amount of work to take an existing well-organized lecture and record it. And if you aren't well organized, then you're wasting your time. The other thing about it is that we're not making a high production evening news. What we're doing is we're capturing something that takes the place of an on-campus lecture. So high production values is a waste of time and money. The object is to get a tight, good lecture that has good content and is well organized and has a moderate amount of production, meaning you can actually hear and see things, and that's about it. No script. This is the same thing as lecturing on campus, where you don't have a script. It takes maybe a day to get used to lecturing with no script to no audience, and after that, it's okay, and you can go from there. And I've learned to keep the camera rolling. The dog can bark, the phone can ring, I can totally blow it. It's okay. Just stop, reset your brain to the beginning of the last sentence, look at the camera and start the sentence again while the camera keeps rolling, and you can edit it out later. It's easy. With this way, I can knock out 5 lectures in a day on a good day, including both recording and editing. I've also found that I edit out non-essential sentences. I end up editing away all of the stories, all of the jokes, but I end up editing out sentences that maybe petered out or weren't so great. Just cut them. It makes a much nicer, tighter recording that's short. I don't know if you want to hear about the equipment. There it is, what I use. The Wacom graphics tablet, I bought that back in 2013. Today, I would just use an iPad, like a recent iPad with an Apple Pencil, and that works just as well. So I'll take really PDF slides, put them on the tablet, and then use the pencil to write over them. And there we go. So the fall experiment. In the department, we've been doing a lot of head scratching about what to do, with everybody else. One of the things we're doing is trying to make every single one of our laboratory courses work this fall. And I think we're going to pull that off. But the other thing is to provide at least some face-to-face experiences, especially for incoming students, both the professional master's students and the freshmen. So how do we do that with all the restrictions on classroom size and needing to provide distance options for students who have to quarantine or aren't here yet on campus? This course I'm teaching is one of the incoming professional master's courses. And so it's an opportunity to have some face-to-face experiences. And so I'm going to try to do a flipped classroom approach where we will have, I mean, a student can take this course in a fully distance format, but there will be opportunities to come basically to recitation sections, problem-solving sessions. The students will have to sign up and attendance will be limited to the number of spaces in the room. But other than that, we'll try to have at least some face-to-face experiences for those who choose to do that. This will be run in Canvas. I thought I could just whip this out and upload all my lectures to Canvas. It's going to be a little more work than that to set up Canvas with all these modules. So I'm probably not going to get this done before the semester starts, but get it, maybe get a few weeks ahead at least, and try to leverage a course that is highly modularized and will provide some kind of reasonable experience for the students, even though we have a mostly distance format. So here's how I see that going. Monday will be a Zoom-based lecture. So it'll be real time, and it'll introduce the module. It'll be in the assigned Monday, Wednesday, Friday course time. I hope I don't use the whole 50 minutes. We'll see how that goes. But the point of this is to introduce the module, introduce what the learning objectives are for the module, and what the assignment is. The lectures, will be posted on Canvas, and students watch those on their own time, or they can read the textbook if they want. It's my textbook, so the lectures follow the textbook almost word to word. And then we'll have recitations, so I'm going to wear my mask and come to campus on Wednesdays and Fridays in the scheduled class time, and we'll do some problem-solving sessions and have an opportunity for students at least some number of times during the semester to meet face-to-face. There'll be a Zoom-based office hour on Thursdays for distance students and discussion forum on Canvas on Fridays. And then the homework assignment for the week, I've decided I'll just leave Canvas open until Sunday when the students will have a deadline to turn in their assignment before the next Monday's module starts. So we'll see how that goes. You know, in my experience, even just traditional classes, when I'd hold office hours, you know, some fraction of the students would come to office hours and the rest won't. And it's this, the usual suspects who come to office hours, and that's fine. I think the in-person experiences, you know, in the past, I've been skeptical of why you need in-person versus Zoom or something else, but this fall is different because there are 0 in-person experiences. My college-age son said he can adapt to all this, so these distance courses are fine, but he still goes nuts sitting at home and wants some in-person contact. So that's really the thinking here, is that we'll provide it. And this is what we can do. There's a photo of Socrates on his deathbed from William. So I'd say a summary: modular teaching focuses on the student learning process. It's not about the instructor. And so this is how the students think. And so we're going to try to support that as best we can and be focused on what they do and leave out what they don't do. So short, concise, directed, organized, centered around the homework session, not the lecture. But of course, we want good, tight lectures. On the MSEE, this has been an opportunity to break out of the traditional campus schedule, and we have asynchronous courses that are not tied to the semester schedule. The lectures are not tied to the 50-minute Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, and the courses are not tied to the 15-week semester schedule. So the traditional lectures are too long, semester's too long. I guess, you know, we get into the distance business. I feel like I have a pretty efficient process for recording videos. It's fairly low cost. It's pretty efficient of time. And then I actually don't have any experience in doing a flipped classroom, but I've seen my colleagues do it and all the problems they had. And so I'm going to try it with adapting this course for the fall to try to address the challenges that we face this fall for the hybrid instruction. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bob. Yeah, let's have.
Thanks.
So thank you so much. We still have some time here, and I would like to throw it over to the other people. I took a lot of notes and have some questions, but I would like to hear what other people think and what they took away from that.
I mean, I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit, but you know, one of the things that the campus was talking about earlier, I mean, which I think is still a possibility for the fall, but this idea of dividing classes into 2 8-week sessions where, you know, students would enroll in half and then, you know, then kind of continue on to the second, you know, a different set of classes in the second 8 weeks. And it just, you know, it presented all kinds of logistical challenges, and, you know, the idea of teaching for 3 hours a day for one topic just, I don't think made sense for anybody. But coming back to this idea that you mentioned about, you know, the modules, the course should be small, you know, and the semester is currently too long. I mean, this makes me wonder if we should be thinking about how to structure our 16-week courses into 4 or 5 week blocks, even if it's informal, right? I mean, even if the student is not getting a grade for each block and then moving on to the second, you know, enrolling in another block, if it's just there's somehow a break inserted into a course where the students who are behind or struggling would have a little bit of time to then catch up before the next block began. I'd have to think a little bit about how to make that work, but it would add a different rhythm to the semester.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. You know, taking a 16-week course and giving it in 8 weeks to double the pace, I was completely against.
Mm-hmm.
It's going in the opposite direction. So, you know, here I'm planning on going at the normal pace, but I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. And the students do have a logical leap, you know, to cope with, and we need to make it very directed and efficient in their time. Yeah, I like these smaller chunks. An interesting thing in the MSEE is that once we get a course up, it continues to run. And so as we put up more and more courses, we just build up this big offering of all these courses running in parallel. And we can do it because they're asynchronous. And because they don't require the professor to be there actively in the middle of the course the whole time. It does give flexibility to the student where they can start whatever course they want at any opportunity. So it's solving kind of a different, it's trying to make the courses more on demand as opposed to scheduling the courses when the faculty are able to teach it.
So thinking about that, I thought the most provocative moment of your lecture, and there were a number of provocations, but the most provocative point was your opening gambit that the course isn't about the lecture, it's about the homework. And I want to turn that provocation to Rhonda and to Leyland for a moment. And one thing that I've thought is that in the traditional course, the focus is not the homework, it is the moment of the delivery of knowledge. And Rhonda, I know we've talked about the problem of trailing homework. The very notion of trailing homework indicates that the homework is secondary to the moment of the lecture. It's trailing. It may be important, but it's not leading. And Leyland, I have not sat in on one of your courses, but as a humanist, I very much know, or my reality is that homework, reading, goes on silently at home, and then the lecture is the juice. It's the moment of interaction. So I guess I want to flip this. Usually you ask the panelist a question, right? I want to flip it to you two in the audience, or Alan and Chris, if you want to jump in. But I would like you just to improvise on this notion. What would it mean to suddenly say, we're going to cut back on lecture as much as possible? I mean, Bob was saying he's going to cut his classes to half an hour. Mm-hmm. And instead, I'm wrestling with this in my own. I was taking notes and thinking about my own class. What would it mean for me to say, Kuskin's not going to lecture on Captain America, and he's not going to use that as a way into Mouse. He's going to focus on homework. What would that mean? It would, yeah, go ahead.
So I think maybe I have a special perspective on this because I used to be a math teacher in high school, and it was quite clear when we had specific tasks to learn, learn the chain rule, and then let's do lots of exercises on the chain rule and figure out when the problem really is about the chain rule, even though it isn't obvious from the text. So all of that stuff makes a lot of sense to me. My first reaction, since after all, Bob, in the Herbst program, we live by the Socratic method, like sacred to us all. And so but still I was thinking, well, there's ways in which I can adapt some of what you're talking about to my class. For example, I'm teaching an ESL or an ELL, English as a Learned Language section of our first year seminar on literature and philosophy. Well, those kids would really benefit from having some taped lectures because they would feel, they would be really reassured to run through the material multiple times before coming to class and to get used to certain vocabulary. I don't mean just in the ordinary sense of vocabulary, but okay, we're going to be talking about utilitarianism. All right, what kinds of words are relevant to that subdiscipline? Okay. So I think that could be really beneficial. I'm also teaching a class on the history of modern science, and yeah, there's a lot of material that could go into a lecture. I think what's important for us, though, William, is to get out of the mode. Wait a second. Let me say this again. I'm very sympathetic to your notion of, the moment, the lecture, the interaction, all very good. But so often we as teachers can be overdoing the lecture part of it and underdoing the discussion part of it. So we're so sure we can do a much better job of explaining it than these kids can of mashing it out, hashing it out and mashing it too. That we sometimes jump in when we really just need to back off and let the students do it. So I think it might help me, even though, I can overcome my own initial shock. The hemlock. He's a guy I didn't think we needed to kill, but anyway, breaking out the hemlock, and I think I can learn a lot from that too. Just helping me think about the parts of the lesson or the parts of the educational experience that I'm envisioning, figuring out how to break that up in ways that will be most beneficial for the students.
I guess I'd like to say that I have no idea how to teach a humanities course, and it's completely outside of my experience. So this applies to my electrical engineering experience. But the other thing I'd say is that I went into that MOOC in 2013 thinking that I was going to put up all these brilliant lectures,
Yeah.
and students would all listen to them. And then I was shocked when the students would go to the homework first and not even listen to my lecture. And when they couldn't do the homework, they'd go to the discussion forum and ask, does anyone know how to do this problem? And maybe eventually they'd listen to the lecture. That's just the nature. It's distance and it's different.
Well, I think I actually have heard, I mean, I came here in 1989 and as you know, setting up the HERPS program, and one of the first things we realized was that very thing, even for in-person classes, that engineering students, as a rule, didn't read their textbooks, right? So, in fact, yeah, they thought that at the very first year or two of the HERPS program, we actually had a lecture, and then our discussion classes were called recitations. Well, for us teaching it, that's where the important stuff was going on. For the students, they didn't even think that was necessary to attend those. So I really had to change the way I thought about things and just the common notions I had about what it means to be teaching and learning. And that was a real surprise for me.
Yeah, I think I know in my classes, I currently have a, there is a kind of a regular assignment, but we try to go through all of the content needed for the assignment first. And then it's, if we have 3 lectures that are going to be needed for the assignment, and then the assignment goes out and then it's due like a week later. So maybe this idea of trying to prioritize the assignment, it's going to have to be broken into smaller pieces. It's going to have to be released simultaneously to the content. I think it's just the timing is just going to have to change.
Yeah, the different thing about the distance is that the lectures are up. They're in the can and they're up, and they're put up at the same time as the assignment. And then the students gravitate to the assignment first. And if anything, it's the assignment that motivates the lecture.
I
Which
mean,
is
that
backwards also.
it
I mean, I still try to motivate why we're doing this, but the students are maybe partly sympathetic to my motivation I give them, but they're really sympathetic to this is the assignment and the points. And it's just human nature.
So now I can tell you why it's so hard to teach the humanities to engineering students, because they are really task-oriented, and they say, okay, what is it you want me to learn here? And it's like pointing to a cat, say, cat, or for a cat, look at the mouse. And what do cats do? They look at your finger. So you have to tell the students what we're trying to get them to do is to think for themselves. Can you imagine how hard this is to get engineering students to think for themselves, not about engineering, but about the humanities, about the Socratic construct or the Aristotelian ethics or something like that. So it really is hard, but it does, I realize this since I did teach math and since I've been teaching these engineering students for 30 years, I realize that it helps to make as much of that, as much of my message, let me start that again. It helps for me to package as much of my message as I can in engineering sized boxes, right? So to say, okay, here's some basic facts you need to know. Here's what you need to be able to do. Here's some manipulation I expect you to be able to do to apply one theory to another text. That's the exercise you need to do. But then so much comes out in the conversation with the students. Yeah, it's a challenge.
So I realize that the humanists are hijacking this concept here, but I think this is important. What I've always taught my courses chronologically, because I believe that people have to know about some sense of history to understand the trajectory of art. And that is, of course, different than an engineering idea. But because of that, my courses generally have me talking about the trajectory of history And then the projects come off that as separate engagements. What, Bob, you're challenging me to do is to only make the history relevant through the projects. To say, if we need to understand, I don't know, a moment in 1910 and the gestation of comic books, or a moment in 1370 and the origin of English literature, then I need to drive that through a project, not through me standing up and saying, this is really important. That me standing up and saying, this is really important, no longer is critical. And that to me is interesting. It challenges me in a number of modes because it contributes to a kind of post-classical education. And nevertheless, it may add a kind of independent relevance to the work. I realize I'm carrying on and there's only 4 minutes left.
I think it's really important the way you launched this series, an hour ago was, okay, let's get new. All right. It might be a big challenge for those of us who are humanists, right? To say, whoa, it's a challenge to the people who aren't to say, wait a minute, I've really got to think in terms of a kind of modular, bite-sized pieces. The thing that really was depressing in what you said, Bob, was the attention span of 5 to 10 minutes. I kind of thought it was higher than that, but keeping that in mind, it means I'm gonna do that a lot more. Break up the class into the breakout groups, or give them very specific tasks. Okay, come back and let's get together. So that even if you're talking about a very different kind of teaching, I can still learn from what it is that you've presented. And
I also, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, the 5 to 10 minutes, I think that's pretty well established research.
I believe.
And it is unfortunate. It's not that, I guess after 45 minutes, there's some chance if it's in the afternoon that I'll be asleep, but it's not, certainly it's not as efficient.
Oh, yeah.
This is Chris. I've been listening and I've been looking for a break here. I know we're about to the end. I strongly believe in what I call shaking the student. You never shake a baby, but you can shake a college student every 5 to 10 minutes for that attention span thing. I agree with everything I'm hearing. I'm a big flipped classroom person, and I've had great luck with it because I fold in interaction into the flipped lecture, which forces them to, as part of their grade, answer questions as they consume the material. But I struggle fundamentally with the concept of the next generation that we're approaching. And I know you need to know your audience, you need to teach to them, but students can't just eat cotton candy all the time. They need to have a balanced diet. And I think if we're training them to just only get what they need in their lectures, then that's the type of student we're training in the world. And they go into the world, and I'm not trying to criticize Bob's methodology. I just think there needs to be a balance. If we're going to embrace a new modality of teaching, if we cater too much to what the students want, we're going to turn out students that can't think for themselves or think beyond just a problem that they need to answer. And so I guess my point here is I think we need to consider the results of the technique on the larger picture of what a student can do with that knowledge, how they can apply it. And I know it's different for different classes, but I strive to find a balance between what the students want and what the parent wants, or what they need to eat, what other analogy you want to consider. And I'm not saying I've perfected it, but I definitely look forward to sharing some of the techniques I've come up with down the road. So
I think I would say that as the instructor, it's up to you to decide what to give the students, what to feed the students, of course. But I guess I'm most interested in hearing any tips or secrets you have for how to make a success of a flipped class.
Well, just briefly, I cringed when you mentioned how short they should be. I strive to have, roughly 20-minute flipped classroom lectures, 25 minutes, but they're all guest lectures for the most part. But I have one that's 80 minutes. But it's, how do you talk about spacecraft design in 20 minutes when there's so many things? But anyway, my point is I use Play Pause It, which is a tool that you may be familiar with. And there are interaction points throughout each flipped classroom lecture. It may be an open-ended question. It may be a true-false. It may be whatever was just discussed. And it is a drudgery. It is a homework to watch it per se, but they know it's part of their grade. They can't skip ahead. So they're going to consume it somehow. But that has been an effective tool to easily insert questions into any pre-recorded material. And then we have, in the live lecture, in the Zoom or in the classroom, we'll ask questions about the video that they had to watch prior to coming to class. So that is another way for them to gain those either clicker points, or with Zoom, we use polls that are available to all of us to capture that interaction with the flipped content. I hope that helps.
It does help. It helps tremendously. So it also gives me a lead into wrapping us up, which is we will have tech sessions on Play Pause It and how to build in questions into future videos. I'm very conscious of the time and our talk of 5-minute videos. This is recording and it's going to be well over a 5-minute video. So with that, I want to once again thank Bob. Thank you, Bob, for delivering a great lecture. And I want to thank all of you for attending the first of these, and I hope they grow. I think this was great. Bob's provocations, I found it shook me, and that is what I'm looking for. So with no further ado, we are going to go, and I wish you all well, stay safe, and I would say onwards.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.